So a week and a half ago, Kamala Harris's husband is hanging out on the White House balcony with Joe Biden, and he gets COVID. He's diagnosed with COVID like the day after he was with Joe Biden. And now Joe Biden supposedly has COVID after being at the NAACP event in Las Vegas, hanging out with them. He's gone to Delaware to recuperate. A lot of people are kind of suspicious this may be some level of cover because we know this. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Hakeem Jeffries have now decided that it is time for an end to the Biden campaign. They have floated this out, and they are prepared to push Joe Biden out however much they can. Someone who hasn't learned this yet is Senator Padilla, who's still defending Joe Biden.
Joining us right now is Democratic Senator Alex Padilla from California. Senator, thank you so much for coming in. Adam Schiff, who is running for the other Senate seat in your state, he has called on Biden to step aside. And now you have this reporting from the former House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi. You have stuck with Biden throughout, but do you think the walls are closing in around him now?
I do not, Kate. I mean, I have tremendous respect for Nancy Pelosi, have a good relationship with my soon-to-be colleague, Adam Schiff. I just happen to disagree when it comes to their assessments. I'm not just looking at the numbers, looking at the polls. I'm talking to people as well. Here's what I take away. Number one, there's a big disconnect between the chattering class and the working class in terms of what's going on with this race. This is going to be a close race in November, just as it was 4 years ago. But increasingly, people remember and recognize what's at stake in this election, not just the record and the leadership of President Biden and the Biden-Harris administration, but the contrast couldn't be clearer. And we're hearing it all week long at this Republican convention, what's at risk should Donald Trump win this November. So, look, the polls showed Joe Biden more than in the ballgame. What we need to do is make sure every Democrat is doing their part for the next 109 days, and we will win this November.
He sounds pretty confident. Nobody else in the Democratic Party is confident. Here's Jeff Zeleny at CNN.
And talking to a senior Democratic advisor tonight who is telling me this. He said he believes the president is being, quote, more receptive to these calls of concern. He goes on to say this: the private conversations with the Hill are continuing, this advisor tells me. He's being receptive, not as defiant as he is publicly. Goes on to saying, talking about Vice President Kamala Harris, who initially he wondered how she may fare in a campaign should it come to that. I'm told now he's asking questions, saying, do you think Kamala can win? Again, this advisor offers caution, saying this: it is still unclear where he's going to land, but he seems to be listening.
He seems to be listening. John Heilemann at MSNBC. Interesting conversation here. Listen to this.
Is what it looks like when the Democratic leadership still trying to get Joe Biden to do what they believe is the right thing for the party, which is to step aside, still trying to only go public in a kind of oblique way, not calling a press conference, not issuing anything formal, but their patience is now exhausted.
Their patience is now exhausted. You can hear the conversation turning now on Morning Joe that went from saying Biden needed to step aside to rah-rah rally around Joe Biden to now this.
The sobering message he got yesterday from congressional leaders on his biggest fundraiser was simple. We're losing, you're losing, and you're going to run out of money because the donors have left. So I don't know what those two or three in his inner circle are going to say to that. But the fact is, they don't know more than Nancy Pelosi about polling. They don't know more about contributors than Jeffrey Katzenberg, who's dedicated a good chunk of, the last decade to helping elect Joe Biden. And when you hear from congressional losers, we're losing, you're losing, and the donors have all abandoned you. It doesn't really matter what people are saying on the inside.
Like I said.
No, it doesn't really matter. Here's some Mika Brzezinski.
Point that you made a week ago, perhaps more, and that the Dems need to get it together. They really need to get whatever they've got going. Whatever it is, the problem should not be our candidate. The focus should be on Donald Trump. It may or may not be Joe Biden. I trust Joe Biden's abilities. I also trust Nancy Pelosi's political acumen. Nobody knows politics more than her.
Okay, one last clip here. This is Van Jones on CNN driving the point home.
There are a lot of people who want Biden to stay in. I want to just keep pointing out there's still grassroots love for Joe Biden. Everybody doesn't agree. But today is a terrible day. If you pull back and look at this thing, strength versus weakness, a bullet couldn't stop Trump. A virus just stopped Biden. You've got the nominees of this party getting their butts kissed. Biden's getting his butt kicked by his own party. The Democrats are coming apart. The Republicans are coming together. That's what's happening. And at some point, this party has to look at the reality of that. And
let me just say on Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi, first and foremost, no one understands or feels more strongly about the threat that Trumpism represents than Nancy Pelosi. She faced it down as Speaker. And Nancy Pelosi is someone who first and foremost says, how do we win?
How do we win?
How are we going to win?
I'll tell you
and
right
so I think that's the message that she...
Now, this is all extremely notable because events are beginning to pick up steam. The Biden camp thought they could delay this, rush a virtual nomination, and hold on. And it was Biden's decision to rush a nomination that showed the Democrats they had to pick up steam with their effort. And in picking up steam with their effort, they're now trying to boot the sitting president of the United States. Now, pay attention to this, please, because the Democrats have told us that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, and it is Democratic political leaders trying to force a coup on this president. They are trying to force him out of an election where he has won the primaries and gotten the nomination. So they're lecturing Americans on Trump being a threat to democracy. The democratic process spoke on their side, and now they don't like it, and they're trying to throw him overboard because he can't win. It's all about power for them. It's all about power. They can talk about threats to democracy, the democratic process with the democratic primaries, and they want to ignore the results. That's what's happening. It is very notable that this sort of thing is happening, and they are desperate. They see their internal polling. It has caused a panic. Now, here's the thing I've told you before about the polling. You got to pay attention to this. You may doubt the public polling. The Democrats tend to believe the public polling. But the Democrats and Republicans together do major deep dive, expensive polling. So a media poll may cost $10,000, $20,000 to do. A deep dive poll by the Democrats or Republicans costs $100,000. It's far more comprehensive, far more people touched, far more people reached, far more people questioned. It's deep and probative. And the Democrats seem quite panicked by what their internal polling is seeing. And their internal polling, because it's so comprehensive and so deep and so thorough, shows up quicker than public polling. The private polling can pick up trends faster than the public polling. The public polling has seen a slight shift to Donald Trump in the past few weeks. And this is pre-assassination shift. The Democratic internal polling is causing them to panic that there's no way Joe Biden can win. Here's a problem for the Democrats, though. A number of black voices on television over the past 48 hours have said it has to be Kamala Harris. If it's not Joe Biden, it has to be Kamala Harris. Go back to that first piece of audio I played you. Joe Biden with Jeff Zeleny is asking now, can Kamala do it? Can Kamala win? The polling, the Democrats' internal polling shows that anyone who has defended Joe Biden, anyone who has said he's okay, anyone who has covered for his decline is unpopular with the public, and that includes Kamala Harris, who participated in the cover-up of the decline of Joe Biden. That means that Joe Biden is probably going to be forced out. And that also means that with him, Kamala Harris will be forced out, if he goes at all. Joe Biden still has to make the decision. You know, I try to tamp down on conspiracy theories, and I don't think this is a conspiracy. It's just my guess of what's happening, is Jill Biden and Hunter Biden have extricated Joe Biden from Washington to Delaware to keep him inside the bubble, to convince him he can beat COVID so he can beat Donald Trump so that he stays in the race. And the Democrats increasingly know that only Joe Biden can get himself out of the race unless they have a very, very nasty fight at the Democratic convention. And they change the rules through sleight of hand, ignore the democratic processes, and they throw Joe Biden out of the race. Joe Biden needs to leave the race for the Democrats to win. Somebody's got to convince Joe Biden of that. His wife and son seem unwilling to try to convince him. And with his wife and son unwilling to convince him, Nancy Pelosi has tried. In fact, one of the more impressive things Nancy Pelosi did is apparently, according to press reports, when Joe Biden questioned the data, she got Mike Donnellan on the phone. Mike Donnellan is Joe Biden's longtime trusted aide, and got Mike Donnellan to walk through the data so she could answer questions and Donnellan could push back for Joe Biden. And from what everyone is being told, he didn't offer much of a pushback for the first time. He, being one of the key members of the inner circle who's convinced Joe Biden to stay in the race, didn't push back when confronted with Nancy Pelosi's data. She trying to make the case. And from what everyone is being told, myself included, the only reason we know about the Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi meetings with Joe Biden is because Joe Biden has still refused to get out of the race, and they decided they needed to make it public to up the pressure on him. This is where the Democrats are, a united front on the Republican side and great divisions on the Democratic side. And the only way to get them back in the game is to get rid of Joe Biden. And the only person who can get rid of Joe Biden, short of God Almighty, is Joe Biden. And right now, he's starting to waver. And he just might leave. But it opens the door to who would replace him. And that's as nasty a fight as whether or not he leaves.